Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much, Vern, for the kind introduction and for the invitation to be here, and thanks, Rhonda, for all your help. I am Lisa Youngers, the President and CEO of the Fiber Broadband Association. Going to talk about the future of fiber. I do hope they're awake. If not, there's coffee in the back. Anyway, thank you for having me here today. So to start with, I'm going to tell you a little bit about our association, the Fiber Broadband Association. No, actually, I'm going to first tell you what I'm going to talk about, which is I'm going to give you an overview of our association, the state of fiber today, and then some items that, of course, impact the future of fiber and how we're going to grow that fiber future. So the Fiber Broadband Association, and I know I have some members here, and that's awesome. Our mission is to accelerate the deployment of all fiber access networks and then to be the voice for high-speed wireline broadband deployment. And we do that in a variety of ways, which I'll talk about. Our association, one of our hallmarks is our Fiber Broadband Starter Kit and our education around building your own fiber network. And I will address that in the end. We do have an opportunity to attend one of those workshops. We also do thought leadership through our online fiber optics magazine called Optics, where we try to feature great fiber network stories. We collaborate with fiber associations from around the globe, including places I run into burned, like Fiber to the Home Europe. And we connect, our membership connects all aspects of the fiberverse, if you will, vendors, providers, big and small, municipal providers, electric co-ops, manufacturers, aggregators, engineering firms, construction companies, anyone that touches sort of the fiber space. And then we work as an advocacy and lobbying matter to remove barriers to fiber deployment at the FCC, at the state level, and in various forums. So the state of fiber today, we do produce annual fiber statistics, Render Associates. In fact, these are 2018 numbers. We'll see 2019 numbers in about a month, and we do release those publicly, fiber to the home statistics. So we do see fiber to the home deployment on the rise. In the United States, 2018 numbers, 17% growth over 2018 of fiber to the home, with 18.6 million homes connected. And then in North America, 22% growth in 2018 with 23.8 million homes connected. The difference there being Canada, my member company TELUS just spoke to us. So we are seeing these numbers on the rise, and I think for our 2019 numbers when they come out, we will also see a similar rise as well. And I should have said our association does cover all of the Americas, and we do have a Latin America chapter. I'm sorry, I was remiss in saying that. So fiber today, also kind of taking a broader look, we are seeing fiber deployments on the rise in multiple applications. I think the most interesting thing about this chart is this is only beginning to capture fiber deployment for small cell, and that is an area in particular that we think we will see continue to grow. So we are seeing fiber deployment on the rise in all of these applications. So why fiber? Why is it on the rise? I'm sure all of you know this, but just to walk through some of the obvious reasons. 5G. 5G demands lots and lots of fiber. We're all talking about 5G and its various applications, and the demand for that because of the use cases, enhanced mobile broadband, low latency for applications like gaming and artificial intelligence, massive machine-to-machine communications. In the particular 5G architecture, you need lots of fiber for front haul, back haul, mid haul, all points of the architecture. And just to put a finer point from our studies, well, actually one of our studies and something we saw from Deloitte last year, Fiber Broadband Association, when looking at 5G and wireless demands, our estimate is that we will need to see 1.4 million miles of new fiber in just the top 25 metros to meet the advancement of 5G and other wireless demands. And of course, that's just the top 25 metros, and it only assumes one carrier. So obviously, those numbers would be even greater than that. And Deloitte last year, and probably some of you saw this study, they estimated that over the next 5 to 7 years, we're going to see an investment in fiber of $150 to $180 billion to accommodate 5G growth and wireless growth. And why 5G needs fiber? It's the densification, of course. To go from 3G to 4G to 5G requires more cells, more closely close in proximity, and all of those are fiber fed. And to go to 4G, we estimated requires 25 times more fiber than we have right now, and 16 times more fiber to get to 5G because of that densification. So why else fiber? And we end up speaking a lot at Smart Cities conferences where it's actually great. I'm sure a lot of you are involved, and every city has a different definition of what they're trying to do to be a smart city. In Coral Gables, Florida, they're terribly worried about hurricane restoration. In the villages outside of Orlando, Florida, they're, the big retirement community. They're very interested in autonomous vehicle. It's flat, they're geofenced. And so they're very focused on that. Orlando itself working on smart tourism. The city of Philadelphia very focused on just connecting their residents and making them smart citizens. And believe it or not, from my recent trip to Las Vegas, here we are. I did a smart cities tour, and you would think one of their main priorities would be security, but in fact, they're very interested in monitoring their homeless population and using smart city applications to do that. And then cities like Tampa, and really all of them, have high on their agenda to make them a smart city, things like smart pedestrian ways and traffic control, et cetera, and so forth. So a lot of smart city applications, and all of them really requiring lots of fiber. Again, smart grid applications, smart health, monitoring at-home patients with dementia, sensor networks, smart mobility. Boston's another example, working with a large carrier there on making their streets safer and using sensors for traffic control. We see that a lot of places. And the city of Santa Monica, launching their own citywide Wi-Fi. And just a point on that, years ago, and you probably all remember it, the city of Philadelphia was sort of out in front on trying to do a citywide Wi-Fi network. I think it was 2008. And they got a lot of press on it. No one's done this before. This is great. They brought in the right carrier partners. It had a lot of attention. Ultimately, the citywide Wi-Fi failed. And when you read sort of the postmortems on that, the biggest criticism was they didn't have enough fiber underlying their network. So we know that fiber is a needed infrastructure for all of these applications. Again, more statistics from us. We do a lot of research. We found that cities with fiber have on average 37% more deployed small cells and just over 35% more smart city applications. And 33% of cities without fiber report small cell activity, while 60% of cities with fiber to the residents, by contrast, do have small cell activity. So we definitely see a connection when we do our research with the availability of fiber and how they're doing on becoming a smart city or deploying small cells. Why else fiber? Smart homes. I think you're going to have somebody speak about this in a minute. Modern homes require a huge amount of bandwidth, and fiber offers the fastest and most reliable connection to support that. So what's the future of fiber? So we are looking at, in particular, rural America. More than 19 million Americans lack access to broadband, and the vast majority of those live in rural communities, and we advocate that we think our citizens in rural America should be getting the same services, same speeds they're able to get in that their urban counterparts get. So 24% of rural Americans lack access to 25 megabits service. By contrast, less than 2% of urban Americans lack that same broadband access. This is something, obviously, I'm in DC and I do lobby on behalf of the association, and this is something obviously lawmakers right now are focused on, this rural digital divide. So we've looked at a few connections between the availability of broadband and how it impacts communities. And one thing that we looked at, this is a study we did in this past year. We hired Professor Bento Lobo from Tennessee, and he started with Tennessee as a sample and then did an extrapolation to the rest of the country. And he was looking at the availability of high-speed broadband and its impact on unemployment rates. And here's what our research found. In Tennessee, he concluded that high-speed broadband can significantly reduce unemployment rates, especially in rural communities. And he found, more specifically, that counties with access to high-speed broadband have a 0.26% lower unemployment rate compared to low-speed counties. Okay. And then we took that study and we extrapolated that nationwide, and we're still in the process of producing that. But so we saw obviously a positive correlation between high-speed broadband and its ability to lower unemployment rates. Also, and this was a study we released publicly in September in the Rural Digital Opportunities Fund at the FCC, we conducted a study to see how much money it would take to roll out fiber to the country. We hear people say that's not possible. Here's what we found. We concluded that we can reach 90% of US homes with fiber broadband networks in the next 10 years. And we can do so at a cost of $70 billion, so by 2029. And there are various ways we can achieve this through targeted government support, muni builds, private sector innovation, which many of you are engaged in, public-private partnerships, and more innovative deployment models. 70 billion is an interesting figure, but if you look at what's happening right now, these numbers are already being tossed around. The FCC gives out at least 10 billion a year in just one fund alone. The Rural Utilities Service gives out billions of dollars. New Jersey Congressman Pallone, and I think I mentioned him in a minute actually, he just dropped a bill in May that says we need to spend 40 billion on spending broadband and getting broadband out to rural communities. And the Rural Digital Opportunity Fund, which is in front of the FCC right now, is a fund to deliver 40 billion over the next 10 years. 20 billion, sorry. So anyway, these numbers are being talked about all the time, and if you look at some of the presidential candidates, they all have, they're all speaking on their platforms. What's very interesting is many of them are mentioning broadband to all Americans in their platforms, and at least one candidate suggested we need to spend 80 billion to deliver broadband to all Americans. The point of all that is, these numbers are already being talked about. So we use this study, and we filed it publicly and at the FCC, because right now the FCC is deciding how they're going to weight proposals that come into them where they're given money, providers, to deliver broadband, and our weighting suggests that fiber-built networks should be given more weight. And we also use this study to suggest, and if your goal is to reach more Americans with broadband, you can do it. And here's our cost study to support that. So other opportunities for the future of fiber, I was just chatting with someone and they were not aware of this. We're seeing a lot of growth of new fiber network builds, and maybe some of you are working on these projects, by both municipalities and electric co-ops. And part of the reason we're seeing sort of a sweep in this direction is historically there's been laws on the books that didn't allow those entities to get into building their own fiber networks. And over the last year, we saw a trend of state legislatures looking at that and actually changing the law, and specifically allowing electric co-ops to build their own networks or municipalities to build their own networks. And so these are just some of the states that changed their laws in this last year, and we as an association weighed in to support that because we want to see more fiber networks built. And one of the things our association supports, and that we want to see, of course, we want to see more broadband, high-speed, reliable broadband reach further and further into the communities to combat the digital divide we just talked about. And so we're happy to see these smaller entities getting into building their own fiber networks. We will continue to weigh in on those state legislative actions, and I expect there to be more. But these sort of ad hoc, these were the ones we saw this past year. And how else do we grow the fiber future? As an association, we act to remove barriers to deployment. A lot of our members are concerned about rights of way, permitting issues, pole attachment, battery backup from about 2 years ago. So we work to make sure those barriers are eased so that entities can get into building their own networks more easily. We do act in funding policies. I mentioned the Rural Digital Opportunities Fund, 20 billion over 10 years. The RUS Reconnect Fund, they're making announcements now about who they're giving money to build fiber networks, and other funds as well. Also, all the states have funds as, in addition. And so we weigh in on their policies surrounding how they're giving out that money, and also we've suggested, as I mentioned, a new weighting method to favor fiber builds. We're very interested in supporting community broadband, and we're fiber network agnostic. We don't care who builds it or who provides. We just want to see fiber reach more people. And so we support the states that are changing laws to make sure more people can build networks, as I just described. And then legislatively, we participate. I mentioned New Jersey Congressman Pallone dropped a bill earlier this year, $40 billion over 10 years to rural areas to build networks. We do like to participate in Dig Once bills. We think those support the deployment of infrastructure, and they come up every now and then. Obviously, it's gridlock in Washington right now, so none that are moving. And then infrastructure packages, we do try to be at the table to highlight the need for high-speed broadband, and in particular, fiber networks. So those are some of the things we advocate for to keep pushing the deployment of fiber. I didn't ask you about this, but I do have a slide on it. We do have 2 upcoming shows. Like I said, we have our annual meeting is in June, but more importantly for now, we have a workshop in November on how to build a fiber network. And we do try to be out there, I raise that to say, we do try to be out there to hold workshops on fiber education from our member companies on how to build fiber networks specifically. And I also can talk about the association if anyone is interested. And I gave you 5 minutes back. How about that?
Perfect.
Thank you very much,
Excellent
everyone.
update.